TitleMatchNetwork.com.
What are your memories of your feud with Bret Hart and the Hart family?
I think that I certainly enjoyed working with Bret. There's still, I think, still the biggest payoff I've ever gotten in the wrestling business was the match that we had at SummerSlam in like '95, Bret and I. So I thank Bret for that. That was really great, and I thought we had a natural chemistry there that worked out really well. I really enjoyed doing the build up for the Kiss My Foot matches, and there was just a natural chemistry, not only with Bret but with this whole family that led to, I hope it helped Bret and didn't hurt anybody, but it certainly helped me and my evolving into a major player in the WWF by, the first time that anybody ever insulted somebody like Bret's parents. It was just such a natural talking about how old they were and that sort of thing. And Stu and Helen were so great to go along with all of that that was a big help for me. And Bret was always easy to work with. I mean, you knew you were going to have a good match if you worked with Bret Hart. He was so over with the fans that you could absolutely do anything out there with Bret, and it was going to be good.
How much power did the Clique have? You knew Shawn Michaels from when he was in Memphis, and Scott Hall was down in the territory as well. And of course, Kevin Nash. I don't know if I don't think he ever went through the Memphis territory. He started out in WCW. So how much power did the Clique have? And did you see it?
I saw it. Everybody saw it that was in the WWF at that time, and I think they had a lot of power. But that's something that it almost inevitably happens. There's sort of a little clique right now, and there was always a little clique in our Tennessee territory. It's like whoever is the top talent, the top wrestler that the promoter has to deal with the most when he's in this main event program. It just happens. There's a relationship formed between those individuals, and they garner a certain amount of power. When you basically have the promoter's ear if you're in that position. And Vince, I got to give Vince credit for one thing. Vince is he opens himself up. And sometimes maybe to his own detriment, which was what it was in that case, maybe with the Clique. But Vince is great at wanting input from the wrestlers. And of course, when you got the guys that are in the main event, if they come to Vince with a suggestion, I'd say 99 times out of 100, Vince will let them do what they want to do. And so with that comes a feeling of power to those guys, and with that comes the appearance of power for those guys to the other wrestlers, and sometimes it can get overwhelming, and I think in that point a little bit out of hand. But it's one of those human nature things where everybody that's not in the clique or will knock it and say, man, I would never. That sucks. I would never let something like that happen, or I would never be involved with that. But if the shoe were on the other foot, if that person had the opportunity to have that power, they would almost always take it. And the old saying about, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. That's just one of those things. We're all human, and that's, I think, one of our weaknesses. When we get that power, we want to see how much power we have and what we can do with it.
Do you think Vince made the right decision at Survivor Series? And also, we did an interview that you saw with Shawn, and he said he was not in on it, and Bret claims he was in on it. What is your view on the whole situation?
Your guess is as good as mine. I don't know if I to this day don't know who was in on it or if there was an in on it. I wouldn't be surprised if Vince and Bret were in on it, or if there wasn't it. I don't even know.
Right.
I was there and calling the match, I just try to think back on different reactions and facial expressions and what took place after the match, and it all looked a little funny to me.
Right.
I mean, even the part of Bret hitting Vince afterwards. Hey, and you know what? If it was all the work, it was great. It was up there with the maybe past the me and Andy Kaufman thing from, and if it wasn't, then who can say? If it wasn't a work, then I know that Vince did what he thought he had to do, and he's the owner of the company. Anytime the owner of the company does what he thinks he has to do for the betterment of the company, how can you say that's wrong? I mean, It's his company.
Do you think Scott Hall and Kevin Nash did more to hurt WCW, or did they do more to help it?
I don't think that Scott Hall and Kevin Nash were stars and big superstars because the WWF made them superstars. And what helped the WCW was the fact that it didn't matter that it was Scott Hall or Kevin Nash. It could have been, as you saw, it could have been Bret Hart or Randy Savage or whoever. But what happened was it was the top WWF stars all of a sudden showing up in WCW and appearing to still work for the WWF. It was like me and Randy Savage, the two companies having a big battle, a conflict. It's what the people have been wanting to see forever, and the WCW was able to capitalize on that feeling of the fans, and they were sucked into the belief that this was a promotional war that they'd been waiting to see, like I said, forever. So it didn't matter that it was Scott Hall or Kevin Nash. It could have been any of the top. It just they happened to be two of the top WWF superstars that bolted. It could have been anybody over there that showed up at WCW, and it could have worked the same way in reverse. But I don't think that those guys necessarily personally did anything to help or hurt. I think that what helped was the fact that the people thought it was a real promotional war about to take place, and what hurt was the fact that they finally realized that it wasn't. And my honest opinion in the difference in the WWF and the WCW is that Vince and the WWF, and I think because of the wrestling knowledge and background, is able to create and make new talent. And the WCW, that's their worst attribute. I mean, I think that they have proven that they are not able to create and build new talent. And so what happened was they rode that horse of Kevin Nash and Scott Hall until it was dead, and they weren't creating any new talent in the meantime, and they weren't able to build these guys back up once they were dead. And to me, that's what happened to WCW.
TitleMatchNetwork.com